A listener named Martin says, a few months ago, I forgot to pay a credit card on time and now have a late payment on my credit report and see that my scores have dropped. I'm really upset about it because I want to qualify for a home mortgage in the next year or two. How long will my mistake affect my credit? And is there anything I can do to improve it? Thanks so much for your question, Martin. I know seeing your credit scores drop can really hurt. I'll answer your question by reviewing 7 types of negative information that can affect your credit and how long they remain on your credit reports. Hey everyone, and welcome back to episode 1003 of Money Girl. This is Finance Friday, the show where I answer your burning money questions each week. I'm Laura Adams, an award-winning author, on-camera spokesperson, money speaker, and founder of The Money Stack. That's my Substack newsletter. I'd love for you to sign up. You can learn more about me and The Money Stack when you visit lauradadams.com. And that's also where you can send an email question for Finance Friday. So let's start with a brief overview of the credit report. A credit history or credit report is a file maintained by nationwide credit bureaus. So these include companies like Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. Now, they're not the only credit bureaus out there, but they are, the big 3. Your credit reports with these companies contain data reported by some or all of your creditors and certain legal information. And your reports can be a little different because your creditors may not report data to all 3 of them. For instance, they may just report to Equifax. So the information in your credit reports is used to generate various credit scores. There are many different types of credit scores out there, and that helps creditors and merchants evaluate you. So it's a combination of actually looking at your credit report and looking at a generated credit score. For instance, when Martin applies for a home mortgage, the lender will typically review one or more of his credit reports and credit scores. All of that information influences the loan amount and the interest rate they're going to offer him. Note that credit bureaus don't make any lending decisions themselves. They simply maintain a history of data reported to them, and then they sell your report to various financial institutions and merchants who want to buy it to evaluate you as a potential customer. So it's a good idea to review your credit reports periodically to make sure there isn't any incorrect information that's hurting your credit without you knowing it. And it's absolutely free to review your credit reports at the official credit site called annualcreditreport.com. Reviewing your credit reports never hurts your credit scores, so there's no downside to checking it as often as you like. And as Martin mentioned, negative credit information can quickly hurt your credit scores. So I'm going to go through 7 items that can appear on credit reports and how long they stay there. While you can't have legitimate black marks removed from your credit history, the good news is that positive information stays on your credit history longer, helping your credit scores recover. So the first negative item that you can see on a credit report are late payments. As Martin described, forgetting to make a loan or a credit card payment on time is probably the most common type of negative data on credit reports. It's typically recorded when you are 30 days past due, but it does depend on the type of debt, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. For example, if your credit card payment was due on January 1st, but you didn't pay it until the middle of February, your credit reports will likely show a 30-day late payment. And even if you catch up and pay the past due amount, that black mark typically remains in your credit report for 7 years. And I know that can be upsetting if you mistakenly let a payment due date slip through the cracks. And even if you close a credit account, so you say, well, I'm just going to, pay off that credit card and close it so that it will go away and not be on my credit report, it still stays there. So even if you close that credit card or you pay off a loan, it's going to stay on your credit report for 7 years from your original delinquency date. The account will show that it has been closed again, but that late payment will stick around. However, if you get behind on a federal student loan, the rules are different. A past due federal loan doesn't get reported to the credit bureaus until you're more than 90 days past due. And if you miss federal loan payments for 9 months, that's when you're considered in default, and the entire unpaid balance of your loan plus interest becomes due immediately. In addition, defaulting on a federal loan means you can lose a lot of benefits, like the ability to choose a repayment plan, get a loan deferment, or qualify for additional student aid. The government can even garnish a portion of your wages, federal benefits, and tax refunds to force you to repay a past due federal loan. So it's pretty serious. So always contact your federal loan servicer the moment you know you can't make a federal loan payment. They can help you choose the best option for your financial situation. Okay, the second negative item that could appear on your credit reports is a charge-off. So a charge-off, and you might see it as CO, it's an accounting term meaning the creditor gave up on you. They gave up on collecting a debt and reclassified it from a receivable to a loss. And that might happen if you're more than 6 months past due on a credit account. But even if a creditor enters a charge-off on your credit report, you still legally owe them the money. But they've stopped expecting you to pay them voluntarily and will likely turn your account over to a collections agency. Now, if you pay a charge-off, the status will change to paid charge-off, and that will remain in your credit report for 7 years from the original delinquency date. So again, either a charge-off or a paid charge-off stays in your credit report for 7 years. All right, the third negative item is being in collections. So after a creditor charges off a debt, they typically don't stop trying to collect it. They may turn over a past due account to a collections agency that either purchases it at a discount or gets paid a cut of what it collects. When a collector takes over a past due account, the status changes to in collections or shows a transfer to a new creditor in your credit reports. So you might see 2 entries on your credit reports for the same account. One would be at $0 with the original creditor and one for the amount owed with the new creditor, that now owns your debt. An account in collections gets reported on your credit reports for 7 years from your first delinquency date with the original creditor. And even paying it off in full doesn't make it go away. Just like other black marks on a credit report, it typically remains for 7 years. However, having a paid collection account can be viewed more favorably than one that hasn't been paid. Note that there are special rules for medical debt. First, any unpaid medical bill under $500 should not appear on credit reports. This was recently changed. Also, you get a longer grace period, up to 1 full year, before a past due medical debt or one assigned to collections can appear on credit reports. In addition, unlike a typical debt in collections, which stays on credit reports for 7 years, even if you pay it in full, there's a different rule for medical debt. The moment you pay or settle a medical debt, it must be completely removed from your credit reports. Plus, some states give consumers even more credit protection, such as prohibiting any medical debt from appearing on credit reports. Note that some credit scoring models may even exclude paid collections and any past due medical debt from score calculations, even if they appear on your credit reports. So that can help you get approved for a large loan, like a home or a car loan, even with old medical bills or paid off collections on your record. Number 4 is a settlement. A settlement is an account that you agree to pay for less than the full amount owed. It's not as negative for your credit as an unpaid account or one in collections, but it's certainly not as good as paying as you originally agreed. A settlement stays on your credit report for 7 years from the reported date or 7 years from the date the account first became delinquent. However, you can try to get a creditor or collections agency to agree to a pay for delete. This is where the account is entirely removed from your credit history once you pay it. Now, there's no guarantee that this strategy is going to work, but it's certainly something that you can try to negotiate. Also, keep in mind that a collection agency can't remove black marks in your credit reports put there from other institutions, like an original charge-off from a bank. All right, the fifth thing that could be on your report is a voluntary surrender. If you take out a loan that's secured by property, like real estate or a vehicle, you agree that if you don't pay the loan, the lender can take the asset to help repay your debt. But let's say you have a financial hardship and you decide to return the property to the lender. That's called a voluntary surrender. For example, some people would rather give back their car or their boat than force the lender to pursue repossession. The problem is you typically still owe the debt even if you return the property to your creditor. If a lender can sell the property, their profit is typically less than what you owe. In that case, you're still responsible for the difference, which is known as a deficiency balance. The lender may send the deficiency account to a collections agency. And as I previously mentioned, a collection account remains on your credit reports for 7 years from the date you became past due with the original creditor. Number 6, foreclosure. If you've had many months of late payments on a home mortgage, your lender can use foreclosure to take ownership of your property to help repay your debt. Once proceedings begin, the account is updated to show a foreclosure status on your credit reports. Like most negative items on your credit report, a foreclosure is listed for 7 years from the original date you first became past due, and it has a significant negative effect on your credit scores during that time, even if you get caught up on loan payments. If you can't pay a mortgage as agreed, doing a short sale may be slightly less harmful for your credit. A short sale of real estate is when you sell it for less than you owe with the lender's approval. However, a lender may still hold you responsible for a deficiency balance. If you negotiate a short settlement where a mortgage lender agrees to accept less than the original amount owed, it is shown on your credit report as settled for 7 years. And number 7 is bankruptcy. Filing for bankruptcy is one of the worst items for your credit report. It's a federal legal process where you declare yourself unable to pay your debts. A bankruptcy is entered into the public records and then gets picked up by the credit bureaus. The two most common types for individuals are Chapter 7 and Chapter 13. With a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, you agree, in exchange for your debt being completely erased, that your property, except types exempt under state law, can be sold to raise cash. Now, this is terrible for creditors because they're probably going to receive little or none of the amount you owe. Chapter 7 stays on your credit report for 10 years after the filing date. Now, with Chapter 13 bankruptcy, you keep all your property, but you agree to pay creditors a set portion of your balances according to a 3 to 5 year repayment plan. This is less harmful to creditors than a Chapter 7, and it does stay on your report for 7 years from the filing date. Filing either type of bankruptcy doesn't make any past due accounts disappear from your credit reports. The affected accounts are just simply updated to show they're included in a bankruptcy, and they remain on your credit reports for 7 years. Martin asked if there's a way to have a late payment removed from your credit history. The answer is typically no. As I mentioned, it doesn't hurt to ask to have a negative amount deleted as part of a debt settlement, but it typically doesn't happen unless there are extenuating circumstances like a billing error. Once the reporting period for a credit account or a public record item has expired, the credit bureau automatically deletes it from your file. You don't need to submit a request to have it removed, but it is a good idea to double check by pulling copies of your credit reports. To sum up, just about every negative item on a credit report remains there for 7 years, and this is according to the Fair Credit Reporting Act. The primary exceptions are a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, which I mentioned remains for 10 years, and an unpaid tax lien. That's another negative item which can remain for 10 years or longer in your credit reports, depending on the laws in the state where you live. Some states don't allow unpaid tax liens to show up, others do. However, it's important to understand that negative items on your credit reports have a diminishing effect on your credit scores. For example, a 5-year-old late payment hurts your scores much less than one from last month. So, Martin, as negative items age, they're weighted less in credit scoring models. So, making on-time payments going forward will offset your late payment and help your credit scores rebound. And once that happens, you'll be in the best position to apply for a large loan, like a home mortgage. I hope that's been helpful. That's all for now. I'll talk to you soon. Until then, here's to living a richer life. Money Girl is a quick and dirty tips podcast. We've got a great team. I want to thank Steve and Ricky Berg for audio engineering. Holly Hutchins is our director of podcast. Morgan Christensen is our advertising operations specialist. Rebecca Sebastian is our marketing and publicity manager. Nathaniel Hoops is our marketing contractor. And Maram El Naguib is our podcast associate.